Welcome back to the Export Lounge. This is episode 6. No guest this week. Gabe Quigley is back with us in the chair. And once again, Brad Jones joins us. Guys, today we're going to cover all the champions that have been crowned overseas. That will include the Mexican League. Do a quick recap there. And then we've also got the champions that have yet to be crowned. So we've got the Maple League, the AFLE, EFA, and GFL. They're all hitting their midpoints. And we're going on record. We're going to give a little bit of a mid-season prediction of how those leagues will end. Also, for the leagues that just finished, we're going to talk about the most valuable import candidates. And we're even going to give you one of our most valuable imports right here on this show for one of these leagues. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Fourth down territory, import shoutouts, and we've got a new segment called The Board that we're going to roll out here today. Let's get into it. Guys, how you doing this morning? Are we good? How are we doing over there in Algal?
Afternoon for us, so it's not too bad. We're not cooking as early as you got it, but I think we all have coffee.
I do have coffee. Yep. I mean, it's almost 8 a.m. for me here.
Coffee has no time in Europe. We can just drink it whenever.
Martini.
A little bit of a raspy voice, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to try and start speaking up a little bit, but let's go ahead and get right into it, guys. We're going to cover all the champions that have been crowned already just to make sure that you have not missed anything so far. Starting off with a league that we haven't talked about in a while just because it's been so long since it's finished is the Spanish League. The Black Demons are back-to-back national champions. They've beaten the Badalona Dracs both years. Moving on to Italy, the Guelfi Firenze. Once again, another back-to-back champion in Italy. We covered that with Matteo. We need to get probably Stola or somebody on there from that team, maybe Salem. They would be really good guys to have insight from. But those are your Italian League champions. They were a semifinalist in the CEFL tournament. Then we're moving on to France. We got the Thonon Black Panthers, who have now won several straight and seem to be the top undisputed team in France. Used to kind of be a thing with the Paris Flash, and it looks like they've kind of taken over. They've won 3 straight, maybe 4 straight. Matteo Renteria, Justin Marcus, and a sea of talented homegrowns. They just ran that league through and through. Portugal, a league that we don't really talk about a whole lot, and probably one of the least import-filled leagues in Western Europe, but I think we probably will talk about them a little bit in years to come. We're seeing them take a couple steps in the right direction. Moving forward, they will have played 2 international opponents with their Portuguese all-star team. I don't know if you guys saw them play Wheaton last year, and I'm pretty sure they're playing somebody this year or have already. Need to fact check that. But that's probably someone we'll be talking about a little bit going forward. The league that just finished up recently is Hungary. The TC Spell Cowbells defeated the Győr Sharks in the HFL Championship. Brad, did you know anything when you were playing over there in the Czech regarding the Cowbells? I feel like that's a team that I've seen for the first time this year.
I've heard about the name a bunch just because it's a name you can't forget. But in terms of the football, I haven't heard a whole bunch about it. And then especially once the Enthroners left and went to the ELF and now play in the Austrian League. Something I've heard of the Győr Sharks, I've heard of the Cowbells, but in terms of the actual football, I haven't heard a whole bunch a lot now.
Yeah, we need to probably invest a little bit of time learning about them. But what happened in that championship, the Sharks defeated the Budapest Wolves in the semifinals, which was pretty big of an upset because the Wolves have been a CEFL participant for a really long time. They've had international competition experience. I think that's a region that's going to start growing as well, so we'll keep you tuned there. But the Cowbells defeated the Sharks in the championship. Congrats to the Cowbells. Really cool logo. Really cool name. Coming from a Midwest guy, I kind of like the Cowbells, to be honest with you. I don't like cowbells themselves, but the logo is cool. And Ireland, another league that doesn't have a lot of imports, kind of like Portugal. I think they have no imports. They're just a bunch of local guys who love ball. And usually that league is ran by the Belfast Trojans, who was also a CEFL participant this year, got waxed by Bristol round 1, but they lost in their championship to the Louth Mavericks. That's their first championship ever. Congrats to the Louth Mavericks. I mean, good for those guys. Those guys are great.
You have an insight on that? They do have an American who basically runs the show there. Ty Henry, shout out Ty Henry, played against him in Australia. He has been there for, I want to say, 2-3 years in Ireland. I believe he married an Irish girl, but he's been out there, and I follow him on Instagram. He basically runs that team and took him to a chip. He did the same thing in Australia. He basically ran a team down there. He was the one I told you a few episodes ago. That's Boys with Austin Eckler.
And no kidding.
And they were down. Eckler was in Australia, I believe, just for a minute with him just hanging out. But that was Ty Henry is over there running the Louth Mavericks, and that's how they technically don't have imports because I think he lives there full time, so he's not like a import, but he's not Irish. That's for darn sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does he? So he did marry her. So does he get an Irish citizenship?
I am not 1,000% sure how that goes. Irish citizenship's pretty easy to get, so he probably does have it. Which I don't even know if they have rules against imports. If they do, he obviously sidesteps that by being married to an Irish girl, but I know he's been there for a year or two, definitely this year, and I knew he's been building something there. So shout out Ty.
Okay. All right, shout out Ty, shout out the Louth Mavericks. A lot of stuff going on up there in Ireland, and we don't talk about it at all. So probably another thing we need to start talking about a little bit. Moving on, we had the LFA in Mexico. You had the Caudillos de Chihuahua defeat the Monterrey Osos in their championship. Those were two teams all year that were at the top of that league. But if you missed the really big viral video that we put out for AFB Pro League, that league has a lot of investors, and specifically that team, the Osos de Monterrey. They've got Kittle, McCaffrey, Sam Darnold, all invested in that team. So it'll be an interesting league to keep up with because they have that going for them and some investors, and they're close to the U.S., but they also have a really big problem with fluctuating the number of teams that are in that league. Like they've had 10, they've had 8, and I think this past year they had 7. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. In Sweden, you had the Tereso Royal Crowns. I said Royal Clowns before in one of our past episodes. I almost did it again. They defeated Karlstad, who's been running the show up there in Sweden, in the semifinals of the playoffs. And then they go and beat arguably the most well-known team in Sweden, the Stockholm Mean Machine, who are also a historically top dog of that league. So congratulations to the Royal Crowns. They did a bang-up job in that league. Number 4 seed coming and winning the championship. That's good stuff. Last but not least, the CEFL. Kelowna Broncos defeating the Tonon Black Panthers in the CEFL Bowl. Huge win for Kelowna. Huge day for Tommy Smith, Robin Steinrich, and the boys. We'll be talking about them here in a little bit when we talk about the Swiss Bowl. But that's a huge feat for them, and that's this show's favorite European league and tournament until we start our own.
Yep.
So that's all the stuff that we have talked about before. We are now caught up. What has happened recently, and the first thing we're going to talk about is the Czech Bowl, where the Vysočina Gladiators defeated the Nitro Knights. It wasn't a surprise that Vysočina won, but my honest take would be I didn't expect Nitro to get blown out. The 32-6 game kind of surprised me. Brad, you have a little bit more of an experience in that league. What are your thoughts on that championship game and kind of how that whole thing went?
Yeah, I believe I picked Nitro to win that game, because they did have the home field advantage. They had been rolling. You
honestly swayed me to pick Nitro.
I'm sorry about that now that we look back at it. But honestly, the way they were rolling all year long, and I've seen a lot of their players having played against them 3 years ago, and Miro Biro, the receiver, is an excellent player, and Desmond Prussia plays really well quarterback. I thought home field advantage, that kind of thing would play a part, because when I was there in the championship, Vysočina had the home field advantage when we played them in the championship game, and that helped them, I would say. So going off of my experience, I thought Nitro would have a little bit of a jump there. Obviously not, but I think it goes to show that when you have something that works all the time and it never falters, you can lean on it, which is the Gladiators run game, because I believe Ashton Hurd was the MVP of the championship game, and he just ran all over them. And that's been their MO for years. Their MO has been run the ball, and then just play stout defense, be strong up front. And clearly they did that again. I know their defense is still strong. They haven't lost many players in the last few years. So I probably should have thought about it more instead of going with the external factors other than what's on the field with the home field advantage and all that, et cetera. But like you said, not a surprise. The score was, I thought it'd be a little bit closer, but when you can hammer the ball like they can and play defense like they can, those kind of things can happen.
Yeah. Has Ashton Hurd been there for a minute?
2 years, I believe. He went from the Wild Boars right over them, I believe, the last 2 seasons. Could be 3, could be the year after I left. And he could be 24, 25, 26, but definitely last 2.
Yeah, I watched a couple of highlights from that game, and it just seemed like I was just watching him tote the football. That was the highlight reel. I was kind of surprised that Nitra, you said that Vysočina has a really good defense, but I was surprised because Nitra has a quarterback, Desmond Prussia, I believe I'm saying that name correctly, has been a stud all year. He's been a really fun import to keep up with, and it seemed like he got shut out a little bit. So that's kind of a nod to Vysočina's defense because we know how good that guy is. But yeah, we need to talk about Hurd a little bit more off camera just for going forward purposes. But yeah, shout out that guy, shout out Vysočina. Congrats on the Czech Bowl, guys. That's good stuff. Moving on, another championship game that has happened quite recently is Austria. And the AFL is one of the top leagues in all of Europe. It's one of the most storied and historic. In that championship game, we've got the classic Danube Dragons, which is not a surprise to anybody who knows anything about Austria. But one thing that was pretty cool is we got to see Graz finally get to that championship game. It seemed like they'd been flirting with the semifinal for a really long time. We talked about it with Matteo Renteria. Not only do they get to the national championship, but they win in pretty gritty fashion. I think the score was 16-14. And that to some people could have been considered an upset. But after talking to Renteria and sharing our thoughts in that show, I feel like Graz was one of the best teams in Austria the whole season. If you look at those first 2 early losses that they had, that kind of made people, I don't want to speak like we were ESPN and this is the NFL, like people, kind of like cast them aside. It was either going to be the Vienna Knights who got off to a really good start, or Danube or somebody, and Graz never really was considered. But if you look at those games that they lost early, that made people dismiss them. I mean, I think they were just 3 total points or 4 total points over 2 or 3 games that they lost. So they were always right there. And the way Matteo talked about them, they were just a team, like you said, Vicesino, where they just kept bringing back these guys. And they've got imports that have been there for multiple years, which, as we've talked about, is huge. But that I guess goes back to my point is, honestly, I'm not surprised. Were you guys surprised by the result of Graz getting the win? I think one of you maybe picked Graz to win in our game of the weeks.
We both did.
Attaboy, Gabe. Attaboy, Quicks.
In the championship, I picked Graz after when Matt Matteo was speaking about them. It was hard to pick against them.
I've been a little thin there since they beat the Vikings I
think that's one of those games where when you hear somebody talk about it so in depth, like Matteo did, having been there before, right? And like the way he described that team, and then the way we watched them all season, like you said, losing 3 or 4 games by less than 5 points total. That's what wins championship games. In a lot of these leagues, like even Visocin, like we just talked about, they scored 32, but they gave up 6. When you have those stout teams and strong players, local guys, and they were bound to break through. We talked about it with Matteo. We talked about it, I think, on one of our yaps, that it was a team that was ready to make the move. And then they just went out there and did what Gabe and I thought was muck it up and win a close, low-scoring game. And I didn't watch it, obviously, the game itself, but I can imagine it was hard to hit, and then it was really like a tough one to watch for guys who like some skill plays. There's just a lot of banging around. So with a 16-14 win, that's something you could probably be pretty proud of. It's the other contrary to a blowout. Like, sure, you love beating a team 58-0, but when you win one of those tight, just hard, gritty games, that says a whole lot more about the character of your team. So shout out to them. And it's not something that Matteo spoke to.
And we'll talk about an example of what you're talking about here in a second with Poland. I think that their championship was like 58-40 or something like that. Yeah, those aired out games are fun, but can you win those really gross ones, the ones that don't look pretty, and you don't go back and you're not excited to watch the film because there's no crazy highlight plays, but I mean, it's a dogfight. And you got to appreciate that. I mean, I'm a quarterback, so I'm not really always in the mix of those dogfight games, but it's fun to be a part of. You know what I mean?
It speaks more to the character of the team, like as quarterbacks, all 3 of us technically, because Quigs, you used to be one, but it's like we can't get in the mix too much. We got to stay pretty level headed, and we got to stay on the outside of it. Don't get me wrong, I love to chop it up in there sometimes, like Baker Mayfield just getting crazy out there. But at the end of the day, you appreciate when your teammates get into those games and they gut it out, because again, we're not in the trenches. And those 16-14 games, that's a testament to character of the beef on both sides of the ball and just the hard hitting great thing we love about football, like that's, as much as we love throwing touchdowns, I love pure football of just teams being badass and hitting each other and playing what I like to call real football, not the flag type stuff.
Yeah, sitting back there and watching us get 4 in a cloud of dust on split zone is just like a thing of beauty. But shout out Austria, you guys ran a great league. It'll be really interesting to see what they do going forward with the Enthroners, with Prague Black Panthers having some teams that are outside of Austria, and then you've also got the DAFL, which we'll get into here in a second. So that's kind of in that similar. It's not next to it, but it's in that region. So I wonder if, and this is just kind of me yapping, this is not something I plan on talking about. It'll be interesting to see if one acquires the other or kind of takes over, or if there is some kind of regional league that the Austria joins into to some extent or another. And for those who don't know, the DAFL is Serbia, Romania, and Hungary, I believe, are the 3 countries that have participated this year. So it'll just be interesting to see how everything shakes out in that region. But Austria's been around for a really long time, and they're going to be around as long as Europe has American football. Speaking of Austria, MVI, most valuable import candidates for the AFL season. We've got 3 today that we're announcing. I do want to shout out 2 guys that were considered for the top 3. 2 defensive guys. You've got Andre Blackett Jr. He was an old Kelowna Bronco. That following season, he signed with the Helvetic Mercenaries, and as we know, that kind of fell through. They're no longer an organization, and the ELF is no longer a league. But he had 3 interceptions. One of them was a pick 6 and 41 tackles through 9 games. Just like a really good defensive player on their side, on that side of the football. And he's just kind of an all over the field type of individual. Salzburg wasn't the best team in the league this year. We had some high hopes for them when they signed Gavin Sukup from UIndy, just because we knew the caliber of quarterback he was. But wanted to shout out Andre Blackett. He was considered a really good football player. And then somebody we've talked about too at length on this show, particularly with Mateo Renteria, was Eddie Morales. He was kind of the Swiss Army knife utility player for the Graz Giants, and they won the national championship. So he was instrumental in that. He had an interception and a pretty good punt return in the Austrian Bowl this year, and was decisive in the semifinal too. So NVI, we're still working out the kinks. If we weighed in postseason performance and circumstances, I think Eddie would probably be a finalist and have a legitimate case to be the highest impact player, but just wanted to give him a shout out. As we lead into our top 3 finalists for NVI, ladies and gentlemen, our first candidate, quarterback for the Vienna Knights, Chad Jeffries. He had 3,300 passing yards, 40 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. That's a 4-to-1 ratio, 151.1 rating over 11 games, and definitely had the best passing stats in the AFL. It was about 3.5 touchdowns per game. That's pretty good. Our second candidate is Walter Kuhlenkamp, somebody we've talked about at length on this show, one of our imports of the week early in this season. Kind of like just a tank to bring down, a real big quarterback, kind of Cam Newton style, really loved to tote the ball on like QB power. I don't know if you guys have played the new college football game, but QB power is pretty much unstoppable. That was their offense with Walter, and he could sling the ball around the yard. He had over 1,900 passing yards with 21 touchdowns, almost 560 and 6 on the ground, and was the vice champion of Austria. Once again, we need to decide how much postseason will play a factor into this. And then another player, our third candidate, is from the Vienna Knights as well. This is Maximilian Fine. This guy had 1,100 receiving yards and 16 tutters through 10 games and definitely led the league in receiving yards. So, ladies and gentlemen, Max, Chad, and Walter are our finalists for Most Valuable Import of Austria. Stay tuned for that. Moving on to another bowl, another championship that happened recently is the Swiss Bowl. And if you've listened to how we've talked about the CEFL and the Kelowna Broncos, you would expect that this would be the name that we are calling today, but it's not. We're talking about the Bern Grizzlies. They won 14-3 in another really gritty game. And before we get too much more into it, something that I didn't know, and I don't know how I didn't know because I know this kid pretty well, Robin Senrick, the Swiss quarterback for the Kelowna Broncos, CEFL MVP against Tonon, was out for the Swiss Bowl with a significant knee injury. He just got surgery this past week. I watched that whole Tonon game with Kelowna, and I had no idea anything happened. He ripped off like a 40-yard touchdown run, was pivotal in the game with just making plays with his feet. I had no clue he wasn't going to play in the Swiss Bowl. That's a huge piece of information that I missed. I guess I'll just ask you guys this, and it's kind of, I know you guys aren't really particularly into Swiss. Brad, you've been removed from it for a while. But I feel like especially in that league, when it's so thin talent-wise, yes, you lose one of your top dogs when you're going into a championship game, but then it's your quarterback, and then you have to adjust within like a week or two time span. And it also was a situation that it seemed like it wasn't blatantly obvious you weren't going to have him. Is it, from your guys' perspective, is it best to try and tweak some things that you know that you can't do without Robin, or do you continue to stay on Kelowna's way as they always have been all season and just try to tote the rock and hope for the best? Like, what do you think their thought process was going into that game without their guy?
Well, that's tough because the identity of the whole team changes. No matter what, you're going to have a different bedrock of your offense. And I'm not sure who exactly they had to replace him, but it's not it's probably a homegrown. It's not your full talent. I mean, obviously they're running the ball. It doesn't change too much, but he was a big part of the run, and I'm not sure if their backup was a runner. So obviously it changes the whole personality of the offense, where the strengths are. I mean, it's hard to do that in 2 weeks, but at least they had 2 weeks. That was only had a week to make all these changes. It probably would have been a much more dire situation, and I'm glad they at least got to compete as well as they did with as big of a loss that they took. It's hard.
Just to give you a little more information, I know Kelowna very well, and every time that either I was sitting out because we were playing a lesser opponent or we were up by 50, they put in Max Gray, who was our wide receiver at quarterback. I'm going to assume that they put Tommy Smith, the tight end, in, who was their gadget player. Really good blocker in the run game, and obviously a threat downfield and with the ball in his hands and, making people miss. Do you guys think that, knowing that Kelowna lost to Bern in their only matchup during the regular season, with what you guys do know about them, if they had Senrick, does Kelowna win the Swiss Bowl?
I mean,
I had my money on it. They lost the Bern already. It's hard to beat the same team twice. Yeah.
Right.
So I would say so. That's too big of a piece to lose.
Right.
It changes a lot.
I think it's one of those things too, where it's not just about the gameplay part of it, but it's the leadership factor, right? Like, because no matter what, at the end of the day, Cedric is a homegrown. He is a guy who's led the team all year, last 2 years, I think, right? Like he's been
3,
I don't
believe.
know, 3, yeah. But he's an integral part of that. So then when 2 weeks out or a week out, we don't know the true logistics of it. But then you're like, all right, well, our quarterback, our leader, our mainstay is gone. And like Gabe said, he's part of the run game. You can't replace all of those factors. You can replace some of them. Sure, their game plan isn't slinging around the yard and they rely on his arm. They heavy toed it. They run that way. But even, I don't know if Tommy did play or if Tommy's ever played quarterback before, that makes a bit of a difference. For example, in our situation, if I don't play for a game for whatever reason, Gabe has quarterback experience. He has the ability to do a lot of those things. We don't know. I mean, I don't know if Tommy Smith ever played quarterback before. So that in itself is like we talked with Cam about, it's a mental thing. And that's a championship game. We're not talking about week 3 of the season and then you grow into that role.
Right.
Championship game is a whole different ball game. So if I knew that, my pick certainly would have changed.
Yeah.
I would have been with Bern 1,000%. But I think it's hard to, no matter how good your team is. I think we see it all over the place. Look at the Broncos in the playoffs last year. Bo Nix goes out, you play with a backup, no good. No matter how good your defense is, no matter how good a lot of these things are, when your starter's out in a pivotal game, that stuff matters from all different facets. And unfortunately for them and for us on the picks, it didn't work out with whoever they had back there. And like I said, I don't think it would have. Just doesn't seem like that kind of thing.
This will raise questions for the timing of the European Championships and whether people will be playing in them regarding if they have a championship the following week, because you don't want to lose your main guy going into a championship. I'm sure these teams will rethink some things regarding this championship, or at least ask questions and how to move the times or whatnot.
I think for certain in this situation, at least, just with the knowledge that I have of this team, I think the CEFL took precedence over the NLA. I think that was their big mountain to climb. So I think if they knew the repercussions of playing in that game and winning it, they would have done it all over again. And I think Robin would tell you the same. But that is a really good point, Quiggs, especially when Brad and I keep yapping on about trying to expand and grow the Euro Bowl on top of the CEFL. When does this happen and when does this take place and when does it become detrimental to your ball club to put these guys through more football games? And it's the same conversation we're having here in the States with expanding the CFP. So all things to consider. Because go ahead.
And they're talking about adding another regular season game to NFL. The NFLPA wants to fight back against it. And like, heck no. But money is money and people always want more.
And I think that the NFLPA is an interesting thing because it's represented extremely well. And the people who are in that are high-class individuals and people who really do care about the players within the sport. But how much does their voice really carry? I'm not too familiar with it. And are they heard to the extent that they need to? And if there was to be something like that over here in Europe, would it be the same kind of situation where it's just kind of like a bone that they throw to have this little group and then we just don't even listen to it? So
all about the Benjamins.
Really good point. Yeah. It is all, and there's no papers over here. They got no papers in Europe.
That ain't gonna have nothing over here.
So that's a really good point, Gabe. That's something to keep an eye on. And that's a really good point because after looking at Robin's post that he made, it was really kind of sad. He said the doctor had quoted him, and I'll put it up here on the screen. From hero to zero was like his first line on it, and then it's him and I'm way too familiar with post surgery on knees, and I don't know what he did. But basically, we feel for Robin. Best of luck coming back to you. We love homegrown talents over there. It's kind of all the things that we're preaching with how we want Europe to grow as a sport, and players like that are going to be the players who do it. So healthy recovery, speedy recovery, Robin. We're thinking about you. Now let's move on to Bern because these guys are the actual champions we're talking about championships across Europe. They were a wagon this year, and I don't know if it's the same kind of situation as we talked with Austin Brock regarding the Schwäbisch Hall Unicorns, but the Helvetic Mercenaries disbanded, and I know from personal experience because I lost to Bern in 22. Helvetic comes up that following year, and all of those really good Bern players go there. Now, I don't know when that disbanded if all of them went to the Alpine Rams, which is a shit show in itself. Every single post is them cutting and re-signing new players. But Bern, they were a powerhouse. They got all their guys back, and then they got 2 really young receivers. I think one came from Zurich's U19 program. That's really good. And then on top of all that, you've got a import quarterback, Aaron Ellis, who has been a 4-time national champion. He's a 4-time MVP of leagues. He's played in the LFA in Mexico, the X League in Japan. He's played in the ELF for the Stuttgart Surge. I don't know how many imports have done that. He might be the only one who's ever played in all 3 major leagues at a high level. So that's a feat in its own. So you have a guy with experience and talent like that, and you help lead them back to their first championship since 2022. Overall, I would say Bern deserves that title. They look like the best team all year. They beat Kalanda in the regular season. We can speculate all we want whether or not Robin plays and whether Kalanda wins that football game. But if you look at just straight things on paper, there's no surprise. And I think they well deserve it. And I think that they probably got a little bit of hate from the exported athletes group. I think we're a little bit biased, maybe for one thing or another, but probably all because of me. But congrats to those guys. Congrats to Aaron Ellis. That whole program, it looks like that league is on a little bit of a competitive trajectory. They've got, obviously, Bern's back, all the way back. You've got Kalanda, who probably will never leave. And then you've got Basel, who Brad has experience with, who is still bringing in imports. They've got a really good quarterback in Sky Noble. And then, another thing I wanted to say was Max Gray, who was my import in Switzerland. I definitely need to get him on here so he can talk about this. But he was just signed full-time with the Winter Tour Warriors as literally a football development personnel. His job is to get guys in the weight room. His job is to put together practice plans and literally build a program from pretty much the ground up. Winter Tour is a well-established program, but they've got a long way to go, and they bring in a guy who's been in Swiss football for 7 years, move him out full-time. He's now living over there strictly to grow their football club. That is great stuff. That is something that I would love to talk about with Max. Really good stuff from him, from Winter Tour, from all of these clubs, and especially for the League of Switzerland. So that's really good stuff, especially from someone who's played in it. Brad will attest. The more countries that invest in their domestic leagues, the more we can continue to expand in the future into what everybody is trying to accomplish, which is a really big league or leagues in Europe. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the most valuable imports, and we have already decided our most valuable import for the Swiss league. Like I just said, there are some really good players in Switzerland, a lot of imports. They're heading in the right direction. Just mentioned him, Sky Noble. He led the league in passing touchdowns. Extremely good dual threat quarterback for Basel. You've got Tommy Smith, the tight end for the Kalanda Broncos, who really came alive late in the year, played both sides for him. But with that being said, I don't think there's much of a decision this year. Ladies and gentlemen, your most valuable import for the Swiss National Liga A, Aaron Ellis, quarterback of the Bern Grizzlies. Attaboy, Aaron. His 5th MVP, if he wants to count the most valuable import as an MVP. I think he's getting their MVP anyway. But he finished with 2,228 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and 135 QBR, went undefeated in the Swiss League, Swiss Finals MVP, Swiss champion, and now your EA most valuable import. Congrats, Aaron. Well-deserved, man. Good stuff. We will be getting out a graphic
soon.
Yeah. This will be if clipped, and you've already probably seen this clip leading up to it. You now know who your most valuable import is. Look out for his super sick card graphic. Compliments of Gabe Quigley, our creative director. He does a bang-up job on those. There's been some asking for or some requests to get a real version of those cards. I don't know if we can get that done. There are some copyright and infringement issues that we have to work around with using logos and pictures and all that stuff. But if we can do it, guys, we would love to get you these cards. But for the time being, the title is just going to have to do. All right.
Yes.
Anything on the Swiss playoffs from either of you two fine gentlemen? I'm kind of trying to ramble through here so we can get to the juice.
No, I know. I think just a 2 cents on Bern when you said that the guys coming back. They definitely came back, and they definitely left that year for the ELF when the Mercenaries were around. Because when I played against them in 21, that was a nightmare. They were getting pressure with 3 guys dropping 8. It was like trying to...
Their D-line is gross.
Their D-line is ridiculous. Their D-line was outrageous. There's a play from 2019. I have the picture of it. I'm surrounded by 5 Bern Grizzlies and all my linemen looking back at me, and I'm just getting mauled by a bunch of bears, pun intended. So it was like, I know that defense, and it showed obviously in the championship game with giving up 3 points, regardless of who the quarterback is. That's still a pretty darn good feat. And I don't know much about their offense anymore these days, but I do remember that defense vividly. And you could tell a lot of those guys came back with a vengeance and went to show right on the season there.
Yep.
So good for them. I mean, I'm not happy for them because I'm not happy for any teams that used to kick my ass. That's just how it is. But congrats to them.
Yep. Congrats to Bern. Congrats to Aaron Ellis. And and get well soon, Robin. Moving on, we've got Poland, another league that just finished up. Really was ran by one team the entire year, the Warsaw Eagles, and they ended up winning the ship as they should have. They did encounter a little bit of turbulence with Clark Hassett going down early in the season, having to replace him with Vidal Woodruff, who ended up doing a bang-up job. I don't know how many he threw for in the championship, but they hung up 58 points. So I think everybody is going to see that they won the championship and should have won the championship. But let's not forget that just the semifinal before, they had to go get a gritty win against the Silesia Rebels in overtime. Really just wanted to give them their flowers because I think a lot of people just figure that they're supposed to run the PFL. And we'll tell you from players as firsthand experience, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. You got to go win football games, and it's tough to win football games, especially late in the season when you maybe haven't been as battle tested as you have been in previous years. One thing I do want to say about the Wrocław Panthers, who they beat in the championship, is they were a little underrated. Kind of similar to Graz, they were written off pretty early in the year because they had lost a couple of games. They weren't super close with Warsaw the first time they played, and they've got a quarterback named Dupree Mitchell, American guy who is an absolute stud. He also does music, in case you guys are looking for some good music that's a little bit underground, under the radar. But just wanted to give them their flowers because they had a really good season. They fought a lot of adversity, and then also the fact that they're essentially a feeder team for the Wrocław Panthers. You don't have all of your really good local guys, and you're having to take guys that are probably younger or less experienced and still try and go win a national championship. Getting to that national championship is a feat in itself. So congratulations to Warsaw. Congrats to Wrocław on a really good season. But ladies and gentlemen, your champion is the Warsaw Eagles. We don't have a lot of stats for that season, so we're still working on MVI candidates there. I think Dupree Mitchell and Vidal Woodruff will be candidates for that as well. We just need to get the full picture before we can make any decisions. Stay tuned for that. Continuing to move on, it's a little bit of a status check for Denmark and Japan. Still at least a few weeks until either of those are back in action. We covered that last time, so stay tuned. One thing that I did get a nice little piece of information on, and this is not allowed to be released publicly yet, but there is a quarterback that's currently in Europe for a really high-class team who is signed to go over to one of the X League teams to finish out their season for them. So this is the first time, and I've got this right because I've got this right from a source. This is the first ever in-season player movement window that is being taken advantage of. Up to now, it's only been one roster allowed all season with no changes allowed. So this is the first time they're allowing a roster change in the X League for this individual. So their season is going to end within the next couple of months, and then he is heading straight over to Japan. He's a really high-class quarterback, really well-known. So stay tuned for that.
It's not me. Just putting it out there.
It is not Brad. It is not Quiggs. It is not me. So
confirmed.
Moving on. Those are kind of all of the leagues that have occurred. And then we just kind of briefly went through Denmark and Japan. Now we're moving on to the GFL. And I really want to get through this quick. Not too much has changed landscape-wise in terms of who is in the top half of all of these divisions, but we're going to go ahead and talk about current MVI candidates and shout out these imports that are absolutely killing it over there. And some of these should be absolutely no surprise. You got Xavier Bullock of the Potsdam Royals. He's leading the entire league with 28 touchdowns, most touchdowns of any QB. You've also got Rocky Lombardi of the Dresden Monarchs. By the way, really quick, you guys need to let me know this right now. I just saw that they signed a backup American wide receiver and a backup American quarterback. Is that typical for the GFL, for them to have American backups for the playoffs?
Potsdam did it last year.
I don't know. I think I'm speculating. I think they're using them for the rest of the season until playoffs. At least that's what I'm hearing from
Potsdam had Kenyatta Allen and Xavier Bullock last year on the roster for the last bit of the season and then playoffs for sure. So I think those teams with money, they do that.
It's insane to me, but I mean, that's insane to me. I really have nothing else to say. Yeah, Casey Thompson, who is a Texas guy, and Michael Brewer, who's played for the New Yorker Lions in the past. They both signed to Dresden this week. Nothing happened to their current American imports. Montego Moss, our import of the week, and Rocky Lombardi. They just have these backups just in case they get hurt for the playoffs, which if you got papers, you got papers. Next on the list, Gabriel Pacella, he was the first receiver to 1,000 yards. He has 15 touchdowns on the year. Clearly the number one target for Nick Suptenfelter, who is also on this list. He's got 2,400 yards and 24 touchdowns. Ryan Thomas of the Brunswick Lions. He's probably one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the league. I'm pretty sure he's third in total rushing yards and he's got 2,000 passing yards, 25 combined total touchdowns. So keep an eye on them. They're kind of making a comeback throughout the league. They look a little bit more relevant as of late. And then you got a few guys from Schwabish who deserve their flowers. You got Kelly Joyner, the running back, who's the rushing leader in the league with 889 and 11 touchdowns. You have Rajon Pringle, who has 13 receiving touchdowns on the year. And then you have the absolute menace on defense, the all-time leading interceptions guy in the GFL. He has 7 picks and 3 or 4 pick sixes this season. So, and then lastly, Ben Rashid for the Razorbacks. He's been a menace. He's got 10 sacks, 22 tackles for loss, and 44 total. And he was American Football Reports. Shout out those guys. They do a good job. He was their midseason defensive player of the year. So a lot of imports to keep an eye on in the GFL. I think that's going to be a common theme as we continue to do this year after year. But just wanted to give those guys their flowers. They've got a long way to go, and that this list could dramatically change, but that's who's been killing it this year. Last person I wanted to shout out, Draquan Harris for the Forzium Wild Dogs. Stud. And also, I kind of thought the Wild Dogs stunk before the season. Apparently, they're pretty freaking good at the football. So,
Can't confirm.
shout out those guys. It's wide open. We're excited to see how the season folds. Anything from you two?
We've gotten to see all of them except for 2 play, just Rocky and Montego. I mean,
most of the North guys we haven't seen.
Xavier. I mean, statistically, Chella is killing it. We got to see him pretty early in the season. Everything people have been saying, he's a legit threat and a weapon. Felter, just accurate, doesn't miss, knows where to go with the ball. He's fun to watch. Check down specialist, NFL quarterback. So it's a lot of talent, a lot of statistics being thrown around. We got to see Lattimore last week, a little bit of him. He's a stud. He deserves all the flowers he can get. Pringle, with what he got, I think he got the ball like 4 or 5 times and still had 120 yards. Hard to tackle.
On 3 of them, I think. 2 of them easily, yeah.
Yeah, there's some freak athletes in this league, and they're all balling out. So it's really cool to see them in person here and there. And
we'll see Rashid this weekend.
Yeah, again.
We got Ben on Saturday, so
apparently he was the defensive MVP last year too, as people are saying. Yeah, so a lot of impressive players in the GFL.
Let's go ahead and run really quick through EFA, AFLE, especially with the AFLE. You can, if you've been paying attention to any extent, you can clearly see the disparity from the top teams to the bottom teams. The new 4 franchises they brought in, every single time I get a DM or a contact alert from somebody giving me information, it has to do with the Red Lions, who, surprise, surprise, keep recycling players. The Alpine Rams and Paris Lights are doing the exact same thing. But the London Warriors are I'm seeing less of that. They just aren't as good of a ball club. And they've certainly been the best out of the 4, but they're just still such small potatoes to Wrocław Berlin and definitely worlds away from the Rhine Fire and Vienna Vikings. And those last 2 teams are who sit at the top. I think Wrocław can surprise some people maybe in the postseason, but my prediction for that league is it's going to be Rhine and Vienna winning another championship. Do you guys have any different thoughts there?
No.
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty standard. It's not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, Vienna, the last week they won 68-0 and
without playing Ben Holmes.
Ben Holmes didn't even play, so
yeah, the Monty had a pick 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that hurts some of those teams is who they play down the stretch and when they are tuned up or not tuned up. You know, like if you're playing against the Red Lions, Warriors, and all these teams that just aren't competitive, does that lower your thoughts or lower your competitive level going into a playoff scenario? And who does that affect more? I don't think that affects Vienna ever. So I'll probably never pick against them, to be honest.
Okay.
Especially not this year.
Not in this league. Not in the current league, no.
Okay.
No, I hope they do something like a Blue Mountain State, like after the season's over, who's the best? Go meet out in some random cornfield and Munich Ravens and Vikings battle it out.
I love that. Moving on to MVIs of this AFLE season, as we're getting down the stretch here, there's 3 candidates. At this point, this will change potentially, and we might not even do it for this league, but we're going to shout these guys out anyway. You've got Jamison Wang of the Wrocław Panthers. He's got 27 touchdowns, 71% completion, and 137 QB rating. And he's kind of keeping their heads above water right now in the 3 or 4 seed. I think the 3 seed. Then you've got Ben Holmes, Ben VP of the Vienna Vikings. We just mentioned him. Hasn't even played in a game. has been taken out of most of the games in the first half. He's got 22 touchdowns. Yeah, like Brad just said, they won 68-6 over Ferenz last week, and he never touched the field. You've got Jacob Sullivan of the Berlin Thunder, who's the yardage leader in the AFLE. He's got 2,200 yards and 22 touchdowns. And then you've got John Cole, who is his receiver, who's a really good guy in the mix, as well as Harley Jr., who's of the Roll Call Panthers. Those are kind of the five to keep an eye on as we get towards the end of the season. Moving on to the EFA, you've got Munich and Nordic sitting at the top. Munich getting the best of Nordic in their first matchup. Surprisingly, you have Prague coming to life a little bit. Shout out Jalen Henderson and the boys. They had 2 last-second touchdowns to win 2 weeks in a row, which was really entertaining stuff to watch. And then Tyrol and Kenya Allen, who was our import of the week last week, went 30 of 31, which is an absolutely insane stat line coming from a guy. This is his first week playing in this league with this team. He was on the Swarco Raiders team and then moved up to Tyrol. And Swarco, guys, if you guys don't know, is the AFL team, the Austrian Domestic League team. And then you got Tyrol, who is the EFA team. And if you were watching that game that he was playing in, he had a couple of deep throws to the goal line where Tyrol ended up just running it in. So his stat line could have been so much more insane, but still 30 for 31 is absolutely bonkers. I think the big surprise of this season is the Paris Musketeers. Zach Edwards seems to be struggling behind a O-line that's looked absolutely abysmal, but he's been struggling a little bit, which is a little bit of a surprise. He did have a year hiatus, but that's probably the biggest surprise of the EFA so far this season. Our MVI candidates here, Jadrian Clark is kind of the front runner along with the next guy I'm going to announce, but he's got 2,800 passing yards and 35 touchdowns already, which is absolutely bonkers. His receiving core is stupid. And in that receiving core is Brendan Bolio. And honestly, this is probably my MVP of the league so far this year. He's got 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. He can block, he can tote the rock, rarely tackled by the first guy, insane yak, and then he's mossing dudes. So he's really, really good at the football. And then our third guy that's probably a front runner is Russell Taper of Munich, the top team in the EFA. He's got 1,900 pass yards, 22 tutters, and 3 scores on the ground. So really good football players there. Keep your eye on the EFA as that comes to a close. It's going to be Nordic and Munich, depending on who. I think they play each other one more time this year. I'm really hoping that series splits, and then getting a rubber match in the championship would be really cool to watch. And then having them go and play the champion of the AFLE, of course. So that is it for our recap. That took so much longer than I thought, but we are now moving on to our 4th down territory segment. If you guys remember, this was Yap Yards last time we did this on a Yap session. We are changing that because the yardage didn't really make sense with what we were trying to accomplish, but this is now just a rapid fire. One of these guys gets to pick run or pass, and we're just going to ramble about American football over in Europe. So, Quigg, since you are having to leave, I'm going to let you go first.
I got 20 more minutes now, so I'm good. My phys is
bang!
At 40.
There it is,
Quigg. So, yep.
Yeah.
We're here.
You're going to go first anyway, my friend.
For the boys.
Let's do it.
For the fellas to start us off on first down, my friend.
Let's start hot. Let's pass.
This guy wants to throw the football around.
Get the ball in the air. Let's get down the yard.
Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, I've got so many questions I get to pick from. It's kind of just at my whim of what I want to go with. So this is the one I kind of want to roll with this time. Quiggs, here's your question. Pass play. Which European league could disappear in the next 5 years and nobody would be shocked?
Shocked or like wouldn't mind?
Your pick, dude.
I'll just go shocked.
This is a split field concept. Quick game. You can choose one side or the other.
Let's roll with I don't know if this could be cheating in the Portugal League because I really haven't heard much about it over here. I've heard a lot of, I haven't heard Portugal, so let's just go for Portugal.
Yeah, I do think that they have a long way to go as far as starting to incorporate some imports. They are getting some more sponsors throughout their league. But yeah, I did get to watch it. They are live streaming games, which is huge for Portugal. I don't know if Europe realizes the fact that you can live stream a game, whether it's shitty or not, is huge. Just because you can have a little bit of data and some archives, for lack of a better term, for somebody who wants to look up American football in Portugal, they would be able to see what it is and what it's about. So I do think that's a good answer. I honestly thought that this was kind of a cop-out for like the AFLE, but I love that answer a whole lot better. I do think that nobody knows about Portugal, but from me paying attention and talking to people over there, seems like they're on a pretty good trajectory, but absolutely agree. Nobody would be shocked and probably nobody would care.
It's odd because I don't know, back in the day they had imports. Some teams did. I think when I played in Poland in 2018, one of the quarterbacks I played against, Joey Bradley, another journeyman, He played for the Lisboa Devils. So
Really?
yeah, he was on the Lisboa Devils back in either it was 2017, 18, 19. I don't know if he was before or after Poland, but I know he was there. I know he played there. I'm almost positive he won a Portuguese championship. And there are Portuguese players playing all over Europe. I know a few that are in, like, I think the kid that might have picked me off on Saturday from Svevishal, I think he might be Portuguese. And then there's a couple that I've known and around that are Portuguese, but they just, I don't know, something about the sport in a small country that doesn't prioritize it. Hard to get guys to go play that. And then, like you said, there's not money pouring in and there's not eyes on it. Then we won't be shocked. Like Gabe said, it's hard. Yeah.
All right. Good answer on first down there, Quigs. Brad, are we toting the rock or are we airing it out on second down?
We're going to tote it.
We're going to tote it.
Stick to the theme of last week for us on the field.
Okay. Let's see. Brad, actually, this is a good question for Brad. You've been playing for 10 years. We don't know what's next for Brad Jones going forward. I'm sure he's going to keep slinging it around the yard. But if you were made to play one more season overseas, but you can't go back to Germany, what country are you hand-picking and why?
It depends on what I'm going for, I guess. I'm going to say in Europe, it would be Italy. Give the best of both worlds. Best football coming up. The football's on its way up. You can't really go wrong in any Italian city, I don't think. I've been to a few already. Can't beat the food. You can't beat the scenery. You can't beat the weather. I mean, it just seems like the perfect place to live in. We've talked to Cam already. I've talked to some other people. We have Italians on the team now that it's just a great place to be. Plus, like I said, if you want both, the football getting to where it's getting to, it's improving. So if that was my last choice, or if I had one more go at it, it would be Italy for all encompassing reasons.
That's a good spot. Quigs?
Anything? I lived in there when I was in college. I studied abroad in Rome. Love Italy. Love the food. Love the culture. People can be nice at times, but yeah, Italy is probably my second favorite country in the world behind the big US of A. So, and like Brad said earlier, the football is on the up. I saw a lot through social media this year of the Italian league. Didn't see much last year, so it seems like they're putting a conceited effort into getting more eyes on the league, and it's working. They got cool sponsors like the Oakley. I think Brad told me about the Oakley a week for the best player of the week. That's awesome. That's cool. Gets people involved, people interested. So hopefully we see another step up next year, which I assume they will with the trajectory they're on. So got to agree with Brad, Italy.
Yeah, I think it's funny that Matteo said that we spent a little bit too much time covering Italy, but it was easy to do because they had so much information coming out where I was staying up to date and I had something to talk about when I was just sitting there in front of a camera and yapping. That was the most awkward thing of all time, by the way, for anybody who hasn't done it. This is easy because it's conversational, but when you're just speaking to a camera about stuff, it's super weird. But yeah, they did a bang up job there. And then like Gabe just said with the Oakley thing, it seems really small. It seems like such a stupid little thing to have a pair of Oakley glasses for a most valuable import, but guys, we're in the European landscape where there's not a lot of stuff like that available, and that's kind of a role that we're eventually trying to fill in. We're working on stuff like that right now, but anything to make the quality of the experience more enjoyable, a little bit more exciting to be over there, even if it's something as stupid as getting a pair of Oakley glasses for having a really good performance is everything.
I'll tell you, when I played in the Czech, our sponsor was a place called Snapbacks, which is a hat company, like store, like a lids. In America.
Nice.
MVP of the week gets free lid. As a dude who wears a hat every day, won it 5 times, got 5 new caps, wear them all now. I mean, it was like for me, the perfect sponsor. So every week I was like, and they would put a post up. Everybody, please vote for me on this. I mean, the numbers were great, so you shouldn't not vote for me on it. Like humble brag on that one, but it was like, all right, I got a new hockey hat, football hat, baseball hat. It was like the greatest sponsor I could personally have.
That's awesome.
So we do appreciate those thing leagues. If you hear that, we appreciate free stuff for good performances.
Yes.
By the way, Brad, I'm purging some hats, by the way, and I see that you wear the same one every single time we're on air.
Well, I just like this one because it's a football
to
guy hat. I just like this because it's football guy.
All right.
I got a whole cupboard. I could wear a hat, a different one. I color coordinate. Unless it's a team, I got to wear only my.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't do just like some people wear colors.
All right, moving on. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 good answers, 2 good questions, all the good stuff. Quigs, you are up again. Runner pass. You both got one more here.
Keep in the air. Another pass.
Keep it in the air. I love it. All right. I love the questions.
You like
sometimes
having the power
don't you? I do.
I like it.
I don't have to be put on the spot. I just get to put people on the spot and
It's
poke
good.
open wounds. You know, I love doing that.
You
Here's
do.
your question, Quigs. What is the biggest lie the European football world tells itself? Like, what are they trying to portray that is absolutely just buffoonery?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's like buffoonery, but I've seen a lot more weight put on players with like a big following than players with, I wouldn't say like skill, but I've seen more weight on like Insta players than players sometimes. And maybe that's like just them helping grow the sport a little bit, which I can get behind. But like seeing decisions made, or I haven't seen it personally, but hearing about decisions being made between two players and like one guy has like 30K followers, another guy's 1,500. I would say the 1,500 had more skill than 30K, but 30K gets the offer because yada yada. Maybe that's one thing, or there's a misconception of following and then skill. But I wouldn't say there's too many like things like that where the whole world like gets behind some misconception of football. I haven't really
No, I
gotten
think
that
that's a
over
good
here.
answer. I think there's a lot of examples of that, of people who are constantly, and this could be for one reason or another, but I feel like those guys who are and I'm not calling out adventure athlete themselves, but calling them like an adventure athlete, where they are playing football, but they're making their money by posting on social media and vlogging and all that stuff. Yes, that's awesome, and we encourage that. That is good
we love
stuff.
that. Yeah.
I do think that there is a little bit of a lean towards favoring those guys versus giving somebody else a look who maybe doesn't look as good social media platform wise. So I do think that's a really good answer. Yeah, Brad, you got anything there, or moving there?
I think it's a great answer. I didn't expect that one. My answer would have just been that these leagues say that they're professional, and there ain't nothing professional about most of it.
But bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, and Quiggs and I were talked about this morning, just as far as trying to be careful on social media and trying not to overstep boundaries and negatively impact an image as far as trying to get signed to more teams. Because Gabe Quigley, ladies and gentlemen, is not done. If you guys have watched him tear it up in the GFL, I'm going to brag on you here. But I mean, this guy's a pickup and needs and wants to continue playing ball. I assume there will be no issue. And if anything, I feel like having a platform and a voice and a look into the person of who you are off the field is more beneficial than not. And let's be honest, there are people who are doing absolutely ridiculous stuff online or in the real world applications that are still getting signed to ball clubs. So I think what we're doing, kind of like Quigley and what a lot of these guys like Prime Savage or Adventure Athlete, all of these guys who just continue to let people in on the person they are off the field, is only more beneficial and giving you a leg up to getting signed to where you want to go. So we'll leave it at that. Quiggs, good answer, baby. Brad, last question of what are we calling this again? The fourth down territory. Guys, Brad Jones is all over these naming of these segments. This is his baby.
Got a little.
I love it.
I have a creative mind. I'm not just a jock. I got.
And we need that.
I got a double-sided brain. Let's throw it. I ran it once, and that was a bad decision just because running the ball is not fun. Let's throw it.
Let's see. I'm on the run plays. I was like, these aren't like the most extravagant
in-depth questions.
This is a decent one. We've talked about this hypothetically, Brad. If you're building a European Super League, whether that be the Euro Bowl or what they want the AFLE and the EFA to be, if you're starting this from scratch, it could be a tournament or a league. How many teams you putting in? What's the general format? And then where do you host the championship game? Anywhere in Europe.
All right. So the number of teams for me would depend on country size, who gets 1, 2, 3, etc. So like Germany is just a really big country. So I think it's unfair to just take one. So maybe like from a country based on this size, maybe 3, and then 1 from Switzerland, 1 from every country. And then some of the bigger countries get 2 or 3, something like that, from the different regions of that country. So like a northern team in Germany, a middle, and a south. So I think that technically would give you something like Rheinfire. Like a middle could be Frankfurt, and then the south could be like a Munich. I'd say 3 there. So 1 team from every country that has a league already or has had a league with some kind of, not just like a new show up, like the Danube. I want something that's been a staple. So I would say however many that adds up to. I would
call it 12 to 16,
16
then somewhere.
Call it 16 just to be safe. So 16 team tourney. I would do regionals and then a final tournament. So in the southern region, you'd have southern Germany, Austria, Switzerland. In like the southeastern, then you'd have an Italian, a Spanish, French, or even Switzerland can go on that one. I would regionally make that and then have them play like a mini season. So you'd play each team twice, and if you win your region or your division, basically make it a conference of like
Pool
NFL,
play.
like pool play. Yeah, exactly. Play your pool. You win your pool, then you play based on aggregates and whatnot. And that would be the ultimate tournament we'd get to. And because I think that's the one way that you could say, all right, I own this region of Europe. I played this group. Let me see how I stack up against. Because if one team beats all three, I don't expect one of those bottom three to beat somebody else that wins another region, right? That's kind of how I would dice that up. What was the third part of the question?
Where would you host the championship game, and if you could pick somewhere in Europe? It could be a stadium if you know enough.
Yeah, I would say...
Because I've got an answer for mine.
Okay. I don't know the names of the stadiums. I think what Dresden has like a really sick stadium up there. I think if I'm trying to be like political to all the teams, I'd find something as centralized as I can and pick the biggest one. So, I mean, if we're going to include a lot of Eastern Europe, Western Europe, it's most likely going to end up somewhere here in Germany. Because again, biggest spot somewhere in the middle. But I think I would personally have 3 venues that would be a possibility. And then once pool play ends, pick one. So I'd put one, depending on the time of year as well. Like I don't want to play in Italy. It'd be 1,000 degrees for these guys. I don't want to play in Norway or Sweden or something like that in the winter. It would be something
No
like
light.
that. But no lights. I'd probably centralize it somewhere in Germany and maybe like play in the Allianz Stadium in Munich or, something like that would be pretty sick if we could do something insane like that. But I'd say somewhere in Germany, as big of a stadium as we can get, hoping that there would be enough people to fill it. Because I also don't like those where you got big stadiums and like when I played or when I went to a Wrocław game, the Panthers in Poland, and they got a gigantic stadium and only like a fourth of it's filled. The optics don't look good to me. So I'd rather have a 5,000-6,000 seat stadium that's well put together for the players, and then that's what you get. Fill it.
You said Dresden. That would be the one that I would pick. I watched what they did with Dresden and Brunswick, and I think you could definitely deliver something to that scale. The really cool stadium that I've seen and been to a game is Rhein-Fires Stadium. But like you said, I don't want to see a bunch of empty seats. I want it to have that. Like a Monon Bell, Quigs.
That's what my head was literally like packed. It looks packed. Might only be like 9,000 people there, but it feels like there's 30.
Right. And even if when you say only 9,000 people, that's still a lot of people.
It's a ton.
Like, technically speaking, that's a lot of people. So especially in this kind of game, if there's 5,000 people, but the stadium is on top of you somehow, or you get a really well constructed place, that's what I'd be on the lookout for. Because I hate empty stadiums and big games where echoes from one side to the other. And as a player, I want you to feel that. I want you to feel the stadium pulse, right? Regardless of how many people are there.
Yeah.
The stadium pulse.
Isn't that what it is?
See,
in football, right?
Yeah.
I haven't played it. I just see all the clips of everybody shaking. So
yeah.
Yeah.
The last one that I'm really excited about is let's go to the board. And we've got a segment called The Board. It's pretty much each of us are going to come with 2 things. One thing that deserves a shout out and something that's not getting enough credit going on in European football. And then we're going to take something that we've seen that needs to be fixed. And we're not going to say what's broken. We're also going to say how we're going to fix it. And I'm going to go ahead and start us off. So I'm going to shout out one thing that I think needs more attention. And then I'm going to talk about one thing that needs fixed and how to fix it. So the one thing that deserves a little bit more of a shout out and a little bit more in depth to be talked about. We watched Kenya Allen coming to a game, his first game in the EFA, and deal out 30 for 31. And as a QB, there's not a system that you can play 4+ years in and expect to go out there and throw 98% from the field and getting their first win of the year when they look like a team that was absolutely in the trenches. Tyrole's a seasoned club. They've been around for a really long time, and when they made the jump to the EFA, they didn't do it. And this is kind of what I'm getting to. Yeah, Kenyatta Allen had a great thing, but I think what needs to be talked about is the behind the scenes with Tyrol. Yeah, they've looked awful this year, but they've been around for a long time. When they made the jump to the EFA, it wasn't their first season as a franchise. They were an established ball club, really good in Austria. They had the base, they had the homegrown talent, and Kenya Allen was the quarterback for that domestic team before he came up to the EFA team. So he probably had a really good familiarity with the system, knew what Tyrol was trying to accomplish, and it set him up for success for the Tyrol Raiders when he went up to their pro team. I think clubs like them, Vienna and Wrocław, are setting themselves up for long-term success, having those domestic clubs still in place so that when you get into a situation like this, or you're still looking for homegrown talent, or you're trying to get rid of players like a lot of these AFLE teams and bring in new guys, you're not bringing in people who are new to the system. I feel like, and I think this goes into my fix, so I'm going to leave it there because I've got a fix here on that kind of same note. But the fact that T-Roll probably set up Kenyatta Allen for success, that quarterback, it deserves all the love he can get. 30 for 31. I don't know how many times I've seen that in all the years that I've been watching football, but what they did to prep him and kind of just help him understand what they were trying to accomplish that game had to pay dividends into what his performance actually was. So shout out not only Allen, but the T-Roll Raiders, A, getting their first win, but B, doing it in a good-looking fashion. They look like a good football team when they did it. My fix for this week is the Ferenz Red Lions, and it's pretty much what was brought up by Brock last time we were on this show. Yes, they keep recycling players, but it's not for conduct. It's not necessarily for performance reasons. They just don't have visas for these guys, and they're having to send these imports home. They have no clue what's going on over there. And you watch them defensively, and once again, we keep using recycling players, but if you watch them, they are a very vanilla defense. They don't give any different looks. They're not in any stunt packages. They're not really mixing it up. So it's really easy as a quarterback in an offense to dissect what's going on for them and where we can attack them. Just because they're having to play so vanilla, when they bring a guy in, they're just trying to run their base and hope and just hang on for dear life. And then offensively, they have absolutely no rhythm since everyone is coming and going, and you're not having any, there's no consistency there week after week.
I do know.
And I understand there are difficulties starting a program and franchise, like no shit, but money players, and especially with Ferenz, with the rules that the IFL placed on them before the season, is a reason that you just don't jump into this. Like, look at Tyrol and look at Ferenz and just the infrastructure that was in place before they hopped into these leagues. If you're going to do it, and you really don't have to do it, but if you're going to do what Milano did, I mean, it's the same country, it's in Italy, but they had everything in place already, just the exact same. They had the core players. They had Zarak or whatever that quarterback was, who's now kind of like an Italian bet on. They had those core players who played together for a long time, and it didn't work out in the end, but at least it wasn't this merry-go-round roster. At least it's the same guys trying to get better and better each week instead of getting beat by 60 and then heading right out the door. So I guess my fix is, if you're gonna make that jump and you really want to make that jump, do it when you're ready and not when you just think that, hey, we got to get this put together because there's this new league and they want an expansive franchise, and let's do it. Let's hire somebody who failed with the Barcelona Dragons to come and run our program. So that's kind of what the board looks like. We're drawing up really good plays, and then we're making really important fixes. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, Quiggs had to go work out. He's dedicated to his craft. Love that about him. He's going to the physio to get treatment. But Brad, hey man, you're on the board. Let's talk about something good. What needs a shout out?
Let's talk about, and maybe we do talk about it, but because I got to see it firsthand this last weekend, maybe it's a little fresh in my mind. Let's talk about the Svabishal Unicorn. And we've talked about it, right? I want to also say, to your point, the Swarco thing with Kenyatta, that's how you do it. You got a quarterback that played in your feeder program. He knows the system. He learned it all year long, despite maybe not a great season with that team. The ability to move up and play well, and he's had experience with it. I mean, that's just class. Just the way you said, I couldn't agree more. But it's hard to do, but that is how you do it. Is if you have to have guys, and this is a credit to Allen, buy into that, where you're gonna play for a team that's not expected to be the top team in the AFL. You are what you are. You're a minor league team for the big club, so you're not going to get the best of the best. And all the credit in the world to him is, goes through the whole season. I can't imagine it was too much fun because they weren't overly successful. Stuck with it, stayed healthy, and then now he gets his opportunity to play for the big club and show out the way he did. That to me is, Swarco deserves a lot of credit, but not every guy can handle that type of situation.
Agreed.
From a personal standpoint. But for me, I'm going to shout out or put on the board an organization similar to T-Roll and Svabishal, because I saw it firsthand this weekend. Joyner didn't even play, did not play. Okay.
Kelly Joyner didn't? Their running back?
Did not play, did not need to play because of what they have as a roster. And I'm not even saying it's because of our team. I'm saying this because of what they have done. They run it, and even in the beginning of the game, they did a shout out to the 25th anniversary of some championship team they had, or 10-year anniversary. The whole culture of them, the U as they call it, the whole thing. We know about it, we hear about it, but we only, because the last couple of years they weren't really there because of this ELF guys leaving stuff. We talk about Potsdam, we talk about Dresden, the two big dogs. These guys are legit. They didn't play the starting quarterback. They didn't play the starting running back. And it didn't look like they missed a whole lot of beats in terms of how they operate. Opponent aside, I think it's important to understand when you have backups come in, can they just operate within that system? And like you said, with friends going vanilla, these guys had backups playing defense, I presume, for a lot. They were shuffling guys in all the time. There was no vanilla. They were doing different things all game long. So not only does that say, okay, I've got depth, but my depth can do what my starters can do from a mental standpoint, from a scheme standpoint. To me, that's crazy because of what I've seen in Europe and how things go. When you can do that, I mean, they were rotating every D lineman at a regular clip, having 3 guys come in, 3 guys go out, and they all knew what the heck was going on. That doesn't get enough shine because everyone just sees the wins and the numbers and they know it's a good culture. But when you see it firsthand, like I got to this weekend, you truly start to understand what that is. And it's not money bought either. Like maybe they probably spend a lot of money, but you can tell it's not so much about the money as it is the culture and the system and the scheme and the buy-in from every single guy on that roster. So for me, people may talk about it. They may talk about how they just won the South because they did clinch it, that how undefeated they are and how good they are this season, and really point out the imports. But to me, they need, and they get a lot of it already, but it just, when you see it firsthand, it really does put a perspective on how well-oiled and what a great organization that is. So that for me was, and it's because it's fresh, it's probably just one of those things I can't get off my mind, having been there.
Yeah.
It was an away game. We were at their place and you just see how it all worked. I haven't stopped thinking about it, and I don't, not in an envious way, just in a way of, wow, that was impressive. An impressive way, I'll say. And then my fix, it goes off of yours. And you mentioned this earlier, and I didn't chime in on it at that time, but the Paris situation with the Musketeers and how their O-line is in shambles, and Matt Exact took a year off and whatever. And yeah, rust is whatever, but you got too many teams and too many spots for not enough people. Okay. Paris Lights, Paris Musketeers, the Flash, cut it out. Just pick one to be your team. I'm so tired of this stuff because you got 2 teams in Paris in these big leagues that both stink. Why? Why put? Because that one, it turns away people from watching football, right? So they have to decide, oh, am I like the Lights or am I like the Musketeers? Oh, they both stink. So let me go watch the Flash. Let me just go back to watching teams that I know can perform or that do it at least in our domestic league. I don't need to see I don't even know who plays against who, but I don't need to see the Lights have Vienna come over to Paris and kick the tar out of us with a bunch of backups. And then next weekend, I go see Paris play against Munich and get beat by 100. Like, just the fixes, don't do this. Pick one, put your egos aside, make one team, use all the talent you got in Paris and put that team back together. You got great coaching. Jack Del Rio's the head coach. I mean, come on. You can't tell me it's a coach issue. The guy won games in Jacksonville. Not an easy place to win football games in the NFL. So you got a good quarterback. You got a bunch of talent in France. Why split it all up? I don't get it. So not to cop out because it is the easiest league to kind of pick on. But that's one of those things to me is just, it's an ego thing. It's a dick measuring contest. It's like, I want to be the team in Paris. Well, we both suck, so neither of us are the team in Paris. Why? The fix is get it together.
But I think the fix is, I mean, and we kind of just hinted on it. And actually, we talked about it in depth, not hinted. We talked about Vienna, we talked about Rocall, and we talked about Tyrol. Those are all places in those area where you still participate in your domestic league. And then and then if you have to do the professional league team, why is it not the La Courneuve?
In French, I can't do. All these other team names we say, that one I can't.
All right, all my French buddies, you can go ahead and roast me, but the Flash. Why is the Flash not the team in Paris? I'm sure that there is a great reason behind it, but I think that's the fix, is to have that one team in Paris. If you have to have a professional league team, that's the club. And then you have a quote-unquote feeder/domestic league squad. You keep all those guys together. And like you already said it, France is loaded with athletes. Freaks. Loaded. They would be a competitive ball squad. I mean, when the Paris Musketeers were the only team in Paris, they were competitive. So I think that's the fix. Get back to
it's an injustice to the player.
I agree.
At the end of the day, you think these guys want to go out and get mollywopped every weekend just because they chose to play for the Lights of the Musketeers, or somebody threw an extra $50 to go play for this team and have a bidding? If you put them all in one team and then you had the feeder league in France, they'd probably be a pretty darn good team in the feeder league because there's a ton of guys. So you could win the French league and you could be competitive in whatever league you choose to go. But for me, It's just, I feel bad for the players more than anything.
Yeah. And especially like just the players in France that I know, like Adam Belrabi, Action Jackson, like Liam Ward, those guys being spread thin. They all went, I think all three of those players were on Alpine, and at least two of them have headed back to Paris or have played for the Musketeers. Oh, and you have the Alpine Rams who are connected to France, by the way. So you're stretching it. It's kind of what we're getting to, is that we have so many good players we have a limited amount of good players in these areas, and then we're just trying to spread them really thin and at the
expense of the players, just to
thank you. At the expense of these guys.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't like it because, like, again, Liam's a good guy. I've hung out with him in the past. I think he's an incredible player. He gets put in this situation where, which team do I pick? Where is the best position for me to excel on the next level? And the answer is no, because you can't get enough good players on 3 teams of a small area. So that to me, I mean, I don't care much about those leagues in general, but I do care about some of those players, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that's the board, ladies and gentlemen. I like this one. That's where we talk about stuff that really pisses. Yeah, that we get real pissed off there. Okay. So after some discussion between me and Brad here about how we want to finish up this show, I think we're going to go with the dark horse, which is another part of what we're probably going to do periodically throughout next season, in particular when we have all of these leagues in front of us. Obviously, we started the podcast just a few short weeks ago, still trying to play catch up, but the dark horse is something that we can definitely do for at least these last 4 seasons that are still in front of us, and then definitely pick back up later on next season when it rolls around, and probably something we'll do when we start talking about college football in the NFL when football in the USA starts rolling back around. So with that being said, Brad, we've got 4 leagues left. We've got the AFLE, the EFA, the GFL, and the Maple League. So let's go ahead and start with probably the 2 leagues that you and I care about the least. And ladies and gentlemen, we just had to look up what teams are in which league because it's all just so confusing and absolutely ridiculous. You've got the Paris Musketeers, the Munich Ravens, the Nordic Storm, the Frankfurt Galaxy, Tyrol Raiders, and the Prague Lions. Those are your EFA teams. Amongst those, who is your dark horse? And I would probably say that Nordic and Munich would not be candidates to be a dark horse.
They are the brightest of horses. They are shining bright, golden steeds roaming through the land.
Spirit, the old cartoon movie. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. They are Spirit. We're looking for a dark horse.
Yeah, we're not looking for those. The Stallions. Hard to find a dark horse in that lot. It's especially because I don't really know how the playoff system is going to work, but I do like
4 teams.
So I like what Frankfurt just made a change at quarterback, I think.
Yeah, they just got rid of Ethan Garbers.
I think they made a change at quarterback, which I think can inject some energy. I like what Prague's been able to do. They've built. I don't know that they'll challenge for a championship, but I think if they take care of business in the last few weeks, they have a chance to make the playoffs. So I will go with Prague and Jalen Henderson and Willie Patterson and head coach James Brooks. Shout out to James. Played with him for the hot minute there. But I'll take them as my dark horse in that league.
Okay. I like that pick. I was going to go a different way from you, whichever one you picked, but I'm going with the Paris Musketeers as my dark horse. We just shit all over them. But let's not forget that they do have Zach Edwards, who's been around for a really long time. They've got Tekadem. They've got a really good import receiver. And I think if anybody was going to be able to make something happen crazy, they call him Magic Zach for a reason. I'm not trying to glaze this individual, but I think if anybody's going to come out of the woodwork and maybe give one of these teams a run for their money, it's probably going to be Paris. But let's not forget that Frankfurt is also a really good ball club. It's just going to be interesting to see how that import change works at QB. That can always go one way or another. Moving on really quickly, let's go to AFLE. We are looking at the Vienna Vikings, the Berlin Thunder, the Rhine Fire, Alpine Rams, Firenze Red Lions, Wroclaw Panthers, London Warriors, and the Paris Lights. So really, you've got let's just update them once again on the field. You have pretty much 4 teams. You've got Vienna, who's a top dog, Rhine, who's a top dog, and then you have Wroclaw and Berlin, and then you also kind of have the London Warriors, who are starting to get a little bit in the mix after beating the Paris Lights and the Firenze Red Lions. So really, it's between 2. It's going to be Wroclaw or Berlin, who are going to give one of these guys a run for their money. Who do you got there?
I'm going to take Wrocław. I'm going to take the Panthers. Because I believe in both quarterbacks. I think Jake Sullivan's a great quarterback. He's been there for a hot minute. He's been there playing and he knows the system well. But and I also just had some of my former Czech teammates just signed on there. Some O-linemen. Shout out Schmuck. My guy Schmucky on the Panthers. So one of my good
awesome
buddies.
Name.
Yeah, awesome fella. So he's on there now, and they handle business. Jamison Wong's good quarterback. He's taking care of business, takes care of the ball, which is really important. And now that their Polish league season is over, who knows what influx of talent they're going to get up on the big club and how they're going to be able to ingratiate some guys into that. So I like them as my dark horse to challenge those teams at the top. Even though we've stated we don't think there is a challenge at the top, if there is one that can make a surprise run, I'm going to go with the Panthers.
I'm going to agree with you there. Like you already said, that Wong is a really good quarterback, but he's also got a really dumb receiving core. He's got that Florian guy who's Italian. I think this is his 4th year or something, playing really young cat, really good at the football. Mike Harley is a seasoned vet in professional football over there in Europe. And then they've got, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name of their running back that they have, like Braun Skonowitz or something. He's the leading rusher. That guy's a dog. So they have all the pieces. Can they catch Ryan or Vienna on a bad day? And I really do think this is how it will shake out, as far as Vienna will probably play Berlin or the London Warriors, and Ryan will have to see Wrocław. And I think that's a winnable game for Wong and the boys. So moving on, and you and I have something to talk about after this, but I'll leave it off this. Let's keep moving on. Let's go ahead and do the Maple League. How much do you know about the Maple League so far? They're about halfway through their year.
I don't know a ton. I know Poor Boone's getting strong again in terms of I think they just waxed the Crocodiles, right?
Yeah.
We had those in the pick'ems, and I took the Crocodiles because I like the logo better. But the Butchers are hot. They're cooking again. I don't know if you would consider the Crocodiles a dark horse, because I think it's a pretty balanced league in terms of wins and losses.
You want me to give you the rundown of what's going on right now?
Yeah, give me the quick standing.
So here's what you've got. You've got Kuopio Steelers sitting at 5-2 at the top of the standings. Seinäjoki 4-1, and then you got Porvoo, who's 4-2. They lost to the Crocs and East City. Or no. Mm-hmm. They lost to the Crocs and maybe Kuopio. And then you have Helsinki, and then the bottom 3 are Vasa, East City, and Tampere.
I mean, they're all, I guess you can't, I mean, maybe you know more than this. I don't think there's a real strong one based on those top 3 there.
I think you're right.
So I think it's more or less who of the top is going to be the one to push through and make that final push. I mean, shout out to Brock in East City. They got a win against Vasa last weekend. Mm-hmm. We just talked to him. Good for those guys. I won't go so far as to say they're the dark horse, because after having that conversation with him, we know they're a young squad and those top 3 are some juggernauts. It's not, I guess it sounds not like a dark horse, but I'm going to stick with the Croc just because, I mean, they still have the good run game. They have played Porvoo twice. They've already got those out of the way. We'll see what happens when they play Kuopio and go from there. But when you've already played a team twice and you split with playoffs, anything can happen. So and I know Porvoo is going to get a lot of the shine because that is the team that's expected to be really good. Mm-hmm. So my dark horse, or my of the top 3 who I'm gonna pick to go through or make a push, would be the Crocs.
Gonna agree, and they've won 4 of their last 5. So I think you talked about it earlier, is who hits their stride at what time is going to be the number 1 indicator, and then who can stay healthy. The really cool thing about the Maple League is that they're allowed so many imports. I just don't know when their cutoff is to where they can replace, because a lot of leagues have that hard stop, or they have a rule where you can only replace this import position 1 time. So that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on. But I think I'm going to roll with you here with the Crocs. I think Porvoo sitting at 3rd in the standings kind of would be a dark horse kind of option.
Yeah,
because they're behind Kuopio and Seinäjoki, but I think that they're obviously still the clear favorite. So I'm actually going to go against you, or I'm going to go different. I'm going to go Kuopio. They're sitting at the top spot, but all anybody has paid attention to is their week 1 loss to East City, which, that could have, the East City's a much different ball club than they were that first week. But I think Kuopio goes back to glory. They get it done once again. So that's my dark horse. And again, the Maple League is a tricky one because there's so few teams, and it's a really competitive league. This is a good thing that it's hard to find a dark horse within that league. So last one, moving on, the GFL. And as you know the standings, but let me just go ahead and tell it for everybody else out there. You've got non-candidates for dark horse are Schwäbisch Hall, Dresden, and Potsdam. Pretty much everybody else is up for grabs.
Yep.
So amongst those teams, who are we thinking here?
Again, it's somewhat of I don't know, I call it recency bias, or like a been in the mix bias. I I like Pforzheim. I think, and we played Hildesheim. I think Hildesheim's also a dark horse because they have so much talent. They got
particularly defensive side of the ball, but yeah,
they're
loaded.
know all about that, but they're loaded. They got their absolute. They got their doors blown off by Potsdam. I think it was like 58 or 60-0. And I'm not going to say that it's a defining loss, like the season's lost, or like you can't believe in them after something like that. But that's significant to me. That's a significant type of loss. So in the North, I like Hildesheim. I think they are a dark horse to watch in terms of can they string it together against the big dog. But I'm going to go with Pforzheim. Again, played against them twice now. Saw what they're capable of. They gave Schwäbisch Hall a tough go, and I watched.
Yeah, 28-3. Yeah.
Was it 3 or 13?
28-23. Excuse me.
20. Yeah, I was gonna say because it was close, and I mean, Schwäbisch Hall got some pressure on Dre Harris. I watched the film having prepped for our game against them. Still were able to put up some good points. Still were able to hold them to 28. It's a good ball club, and I think as you get through the season, that stuff matters in the playoffs. You got a quarterback who's dynamic. You got a defense who's stout. They just do their job. They're in the right spot. They remind me of like a no-name defense, right? I mean, the names, but they're that kind of team. It's like they don't have Kyle Kitchens. They don't have Montez Lattimore. They don't have those big-time names, but they're stout, and they do their job. And that's the kind of stuff you need. So they are my dark horse going into the playoffs come 3-4 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. And I do think the one name that you can talk about on that Pforzheim defense is Key. I think he goes by CO Key on Instagram. Number 7, their corner / DB. He's got quite a few interceptions on the year.
Yeah, you got me.
I don't think that one was on you, to be honest with you. I think they got ripped away from your guy, but we won't throw him under the bus.
No.
But yeah, I would agree that Pforzheim is a dark horse. You definitely will see them in the playoffs. And like he just said, they gave a really good Schwäbisch Hall team a run for their money. So that's a really good show. It ended up being pretty good. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I was rambling, trying to keep Quigley on the show as long as possible. You got a look into the new 4th down territory segment, which was formerly known as Yap Yards. You got a good look at the board, which we're going to be visiting quite a bit, probably every time we do the Yap sessions. This time we were able to give you some dark horses, some predictions, some import shout-outs. Stay tuned for Poland at least, and then several other leagues that we still have yet to give a most valuable import award to. But shout out to Aaron Ellis, our Swiss league most valuable import. Really good stuff by him this year. No surprise. I'm sure he will continue playing, and I hope wherever he goes, he lands in a good spot because we'll be following him. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Export Lounge. This was the second Yap session that we've done, episode number 6. Full league updates, MVI announcements, predictions on records, import shoutouts, and the new board. If you're watching this and you know a guy who needs to come and tell his story, send him our way. We've got a nice list lined up, but we definitely just love talking football with guys who are in it. And if you are that guy that I'm talking about, you already know where to find us. We are Exported Athletes. Subscribe, follow, and we'll see you next time.